Welcome to the Day in the Life of DFIR series. This is going to be a series of videos that gives a glimpse into careers in the digital forensics and incident response field. Our guest today is Becky Passmore. Becky Passmore holds a Master of Science degree in digital forensics and cyber investigations. She currently works as a digital forensic incident response examiner with Kroll Inc. She has 17 years of investigative skills as a senior digital forensic examiner with the federal government. Becky has led a variety of complex digital investigations, including technical analysis for national security, insider threats, internet fraud, child exploitation, terrorism, and public corruption. Becky has provided expert testimony in cases involving computer forensics. Becky teaches at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock and the American InterContinental University. She holds several certifications in technology and forensics, including the SANS GCFE, the GIAC Certified Forensic Examiner, and the SANS GASF, GIAC Advanced Cell Phone Forensics, the CompTIA Net Plus, and CompTIA A+, to name a few. So welcome, Becky. Glad to have you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you having me.
So from the intro, it sounds like you've had quite a career. Can you tell us how you got into the field of digital forensics?
Sure, absolutely. I started working for the government in 1997, and I was interested in expanding my career field into something more interesting. And so actually my recruiter stated, basically, if you're going to pursue a degree, you should look at some type of computer degree, since all crime was going to end up on being on the computers. So I was interested in computers, and so I pursued my bachelor's degree in information technology. And then I found myself assisting and being an on-the-job trainee with the computer analysis response team. And so there I was able to learn a lot about digital forensics and the things that you can do. So I fell in love with it. And within 8 months, I had a full-time position pursuing the certification as a digital forensic examiner.
Excellent. So the field of cybersecurity, digital forensics is pretty broad, right? And a lot of people have different definitions of what the job title entails and whatnot. Can you tell us, in your world, what does a computer forensics examiner do? And how does it differ from somebody who just has an IT job?
Sure, absolutely. So computer forensic examiner analysts assist with an investigation. More importantly, they are trying to basically tie the loose ends together that has to do with the data that they've been provided. So whatever data they've been provided or whatever data that they've come in contact with in the investigation. And basically the data can be anything digital. There's a sense of threat hunting to look at the data from the aspect of what doesn't belong here. It's much like a crime scene. You go into a crime scene and it's like, what doesn't belong in this scene? But in the other situation, you're looking at it on a computer. It's basically like putting together a puzzle. And if you like putting together puzzles, you've been given some pieces to the puzzle already in place, and now you're trying to figure out the rest of the puzzle. IT positions, they're very important, and they focus on the hardware and software of the networks or the systems that they're responsible for. Also, their job is, an IT job is very focused on trying to keep third-party software updates, security updates, and there's so many different roles and positions in IT. And in doing IT positions, you can learn to become a digital forensic examiner analyst, and the knowledge that you've obtained as an IT person will help tremendously in learning this job.
So on a typical day as a digital forensic examiner or incident responder, what is your typical day like?
Oh, wow. So a typical day as a digital forensic examiner is participating, like I said earlier, in an investigation. You're getting information, you're drafting reports, you're creating leads for the investigators. When responding to incidents, it's much like a first responder. Like, you're going into this incident response as a first responder. You're trying to find out what is bad, get it out, and then use the forensics to figure out what happened, how it got in, and where it went.
So it sounds like the examiner has to make various decisions, throughout the course of the day and throughout the course of the investigation to kind of direct their own work. Does it sound about right that they actually do get to make a lot of decisions themselves?
Absolutely. It's a lot of the decisions are based on what is being found. A lot of the decisions can pivot an investigation to go in a different route. So those decisions can be made by an examiner, or the decisions can be made to assist the investigator in making the next decision on what needs to be done. So yes, an examiner plays a huge role in decision-making skills.
So as a typical examiner, how many cases do you work on at a time?
So I guess that depends on how busy we are. And so I would say during a busy time, I could have 6 or 7 cases to work on. During a slow time, I may work on 1 case over a couple-week period of time. When I worked for the government, I could have up to 30 cases at one time. And quite honestly, that's really not manageable.
Yeah, 30 is a lot.
Yeah, to be effective, right? So you want to, and if you're just working on by yourself and not within a group or a team.
So actually that brings up a good question. How frequently do you work in teams or by yourself? How does that break down?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that also varies. If you have one computer, you might just work as an individual, but small cases, you work by yourself. But I found that working with teams helps with additional eyes on the case, and also helps with looking at it in different ways and working together to come to a conclusion. So I would say, for the most part, I work in teams, and those teams can vary with skill set. So if you have an investigation that involves, different operating systems, different pieces of media, you'll have some specialties, some people working in some specialty fields assisting with the case. But when you have a large case, working with a team, it really helps put that other set of eyes on it for people to give a different perspective.
Okay, all right. So can you give us an example of one of the more interesting cases you've worked on?
Wow. So I would say when I worked for the government, doing the different cases, there was a lot of rewards to it, right? So I would have to say the most rewarding one was when we were able to work as a team, break into an iPod that was locked after a young girl went missing after 72 hours. And there were no leads. The investigators had nothing to come up with. And so once we were able to get into the iPod, we were able to find the conversation through a messaging app of the last conversation that the young girl was having with a person. And we were able to get the username, and just from the username, we were able to get a lot of information about the individual. And so we contacted the investigator, who contacted the authorities in another state to do a welfare check, and we recovered the girl. So without our assistance, and specifically where I was focused on a new technique into breaking into that iPod, without that, there were no other leads, and they would likely have not found her. So that's probably my most rewarding case that I've ever worked. But I find any type of case that I'm working to be very intriguing and interesting, because it's not always the same. Everything is different. You might see how a different threat actor conducts the computer intrusion case, and then the next day it's a completely different access to the computer. So it's just always learning, up-to-date knowledge. And so I would say that the most interesting cases I've worked on are those that I've helped recover. people and or finalize an investigation, but also those that help the investigators find the bad and what happened.
Okay. So speaking of keeping up with technology, right, that's probably one of the more challenging things in your field, because these, iPhones, Android phones, they change literally every other day, right? The apps always change. It's super, super hard to keep up with. So what latest technology changes have been keeping you up at night worrying?
Wow. I would say anything that has to do with these vulnerabilities that come across. Like every day we experience a new critical vulnerability that is released. And so just having to do some research and then find out what the artifacts are that would provide proof of concept. And if a case comes in and this new variant of malware is been released into the environment, what we can figure out as to what it does, how it works, how we can get our hands on a copy of it to be analyzed. So there's just I would say that I dream about my job a lot, and I would say I don't stay awake at night thinking about how I can analyze a computer, but I dream about the different pieces of data I've seen that day and how interesting it is.
Yeah. So sometimes it's good to dream about your job. Sometimes it's not so good, right? You don't be obsessed about it. You can't sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So another technology related things is just the increase of the volumes of data that people have access to each day, right? So, the capacity of phones are expanding, like we just talked about. People have more and more access to different kinds of cloud storages, and they're just getting bigger and bigger. How do you deal with that issue?
I would say that the best thing that has come out of, in my opinion, digital forensics is triaging the data. So in other words, when I started way back in the day, 17 years ago, we were imaging everything. We were write blocking and we were write protection, and we were imaging it, and we were going through the data through a big forensic suite, just trying to figure things out. But through the different formats of technology and different skill sets that are out there now, with very intelligent people, they're building programs where we can triage the data, and we can focus on areas of interest. So for instance, if we want to know how someone came into a computer on a Windows machine, we may focus a little bit in the area of your artifacts that prove that. And so some of those artifacts may be your terminal server, local session manager, where how did they remote desktop into the computer, right? And so with being able to triage the data, we can narrow our focus in that funnel.
Okay. And so that kind of leads me into the next line of questioning in terms of, you've mentioned that the field has kind of shifted, right? From, grabbing everything from dead box forensics into the triage is very, very important. I kind of want to cover some hints for viewers who are new to the field or exploring getting into the field. Can you tell us how somebody can start in this field of digital forensics and incident response?
Sure, absolutely. There are so many programs now that are led by universities and research universities in the field of digital forensics. And so if this is a field of interest, I would say take a course at college, see if this is the one that you're interested in. I teach a course at University of Arkansas at Little Rock, digital forensics. And I bring such a wide variety of knowledge and understanding and focus that the students just they love to learn that information. So I would say take a course. I would also say pursue some certifications, look at the different certifications that are out there, do some research. But more importantly, if you love to put puzzles together, conduct threat hunting, do find the needle in the haystack. If you like all that kind of information, you like math, because you've got to use some math and understanding of that. If you like those kinds of scientific areas, then this may be the field that you should pursue. There's also pieces of this field that break off. So you'll have your malware analysis people. So people who only focus on analyzing malware. That's a very important piece of information for a digital forensic examiner, incident responder, because once they can get their hands on that, they can get it to someone to break it down and analyze it. It helps understand what else happened on the computer or within the system. So I would say that get into this field and then branch out in another area of the field of interest if that's what you want. Penetration testing, very similar in the fact that you set up a machine and you basically try to infiltrate the system, and that way you learn what happens from the other side. And so I would say that there's so many different areas of this field and interest. And so if you get into the field of interest and start to learn, you can branch off.
Okay. So is there any specific degrees that you would look for as a hiring manager? Does it have to be a computer science degree versus a forensics degree?
I would say that I've done some research in the academic field in that there's a lot of colleges that are pursuing computer science, digital forensics, cybersecurity. And so all those different platforms, I would say if there's a research facility behind it, if there's lab work behind it, they're probably going to teach you more of an application process in doing the digital forensics, computer science. So I would say that any of those degrees are acceptable and good to pursue, but the more the college offers, the school offers applicable use of forensic software, and looking at data in a virtual machine to try and figure out what happened. I would say those areas or those degrees are more fruitful for understanding how things work.
Okay. So how would an applicant stand out from other candidates? Since there's seems to be a lot of different ways to get in, right? So once you've narrowed down your pool, how do you pick like out of your top 5?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question in the sense that how much research has an applicant been involved in? Do they have any additional certifications besides a college degree? There's the Certified Ethical Hacking certification, the Security Plus certification. There's a certification out there for an analyst, a CISA. I think it's a CISA Plus. And so if they have any additional certifications, they can pursue those. But I would say most importantly is that having the overall understanding so that when you go to an interview that you understand the concepts behind digital forensics, incident response, cybersecurity, and what role and position you're going to be looking at. And so a digital forensic examiner's responsibility on a law enforcement side of the house is going to be able to help the investigation. They're going to be able to understand how the forensic artifacts provide leads to the investigators. And then likewise, if you're going into the field of corporate, understanding what those positions look like. Is it going to be a network analysis? Is it going to be live response? And so depending on your degree, understanding what the roles and responsibilities are from those positions that you're applying for.
Okay. So yeah, you just talked about the differences between the private sector and the government. And since you've worked in both, what are the major differences in these environments are there in terms of the different types of cases, and then the objectives, I believe they're also different, right?
Sure, I would say that no matter what, if you're in the government or you're in corporate, you are always going to be working with some form of a legal team. That team is going to help lead the how things should be handled, right? So in law enforcement, you're concerned more about the request for service. You're looking at how the legal authority is what you're allowed to look at, what the the different things that you're allowed to look at on the computer or cell phone or whatever it is. And that is focused on the charges or the how someone conducted criminal activity, as opposed to there's more of a civil responsibility on a corporate side, and that's more for understanding how the risk to data is. What data was at risk? Did it get outside of the network? Did anyone else have access to it? And that is where that is a little bit different, right? So you have that standard responsibility in the civil sense, and then on the government side or law enforcement side, you have the responsibility of finding out whether or not criminal activity occurred on the computer.
Okay. So from standpoint of challenges that somebody expects to run up against on a daily basis, I'm guessing they're similar in both the government and the private sector. What kind of challenges, do you think people should expect to come upon?
Absolutely. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of challenges in, like what you said in the beginning, and trying to articulate what we do, what you found, how it was laid out, where it was found. So articulating those findings to people that don't necessarily understand what you're talking about. And that goes from anyone from on the law enforcement side, from a prosecutor to a juror to an investigator. And then on the corporate side, you've got your executive management whose network has been accessed and they don't really understand how the lay of the land is. And so trying to do the best to articulate the understanding of where things are. So those are some challenges. Other challenges are that, like what you said in the beginning, and the fact that as more data comes in, and the large sets of data that's out there, that how do you break that down? How do you put it into the funnel? How do you find what doesn't belong and what does belong? And so I would say large capacity and articulating the findings are probably the biggest challenges.
Okay. And so to go along with that, right, what types of problem solving skills do you expect a candidate or somebody new in this field to possess or sharpen?
Sure, absolutely. Not to stay within a box. You have to get outside of the box and understand that just because the artifacts aren't producing the results that you expect, that doesn't mean that there isn't something there that you should be looking at. So just knowing that there is a wide variety, utilizing that team to understand the wide variety of information that's out there. Doing a lot of research. I can tell you that Google is my best friend. And I spend a lot of time on Google doing research, trying to understand what happens. So those problem solving skills comes from anywhere from trying to, if it's dead box forensics, trying to figure out how to preserve that data, make an acquisition of that data. That can be challenging in itself because of the different platforms that are being built out there, the tablets and all kinds of, like you said, cell phones and the different makes, models, operating systems that run on them. And then moving into as well the problem solving skills of trying to figure out how it works, like what came in, how it got there, and just like I said, not staying within a box, but branching out and doing a lot of research and understanding.
Okay, excellent. Wow, that's a lot of great information. I really appreciate you taking the time to explain and talk about your day as somebody in the DFIR field. Is there anything else that you would like to add that we have not covered?
I would just say that you spend anywhere from 40 to 60 hours a week in your job. Most people probably spend about 40 hours. But doing research and understanding, never stop learning, never stop loving what you do, whether it's in the DFIR field or it is in a field of something else, that because you spend so much of your time in your job, if you don't love it, then I say find something different. And if digital forensics and incident response sounds intriguing to you, you're never too young to learn and get out there and do something different. And it's very rewarding. I love it.
Cool. All right. All right. So we're going to try something called speed round. I'm going to throw something out at you and you're going to just come back and tell me the first thing on your mind. All right. So the first thing is, what's your favorite comfort food?
Oh, my favorite comfort food is ice cream.
Any particular flavor?
Chocolate and peanut butter. Anything chocolate and peanut butter is my favorite ice cream.
Okay. How about a favorite hacker related movie?
The most recent one I saw recently was the Edward Snowden. The Edward Snowden.
Oh yeah.
But I don't remember what the name of it was. Snowden.
Okay. All right. What is the most interesting country you have ever taught in?
Oh, Pakistan. I taught in Pakistan back in 2017. Such a great country, such a great group of people. I absolutely loved it. I was terrified going because I'd never been that far away from home. But man, that was a great place to teach. So Pakistan.
Next one. What is the top 5 must-have items in your search kit?
Oh, gloves, number 1, flashlight, number 2, screwdriver, number 3, because I like to take things apart, a notebook, because I always need to be taking my notes, and a USB drive with some form of memory capture analysis tool on it, whether that be FTK Imager, F Response, or some of the others out there.
Okay, yeah, actually, that's interesting. That's mostly low tech or no tech things that you listed, except for the thumb drive.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, gloves are important.
Okay, so last question. What are you binge watching right now?
The Catch.
The Catch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with that. What is The Catch?
The Catch is it is about a criminal organization, and then there's a private investigator firm that is trying to catch the criminal organization. But one of the main lead investigators in the private organization is involved with one of the main crime organizational leaders. And it is so, my husband found it the other day, and I have been binge watching that this week.
Oh, okay. All right. I got to go check that out. All right, cool. So once again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. I absolutely love sharing my knowledge and my skills and my experience, because it helps with, if I'm enthusiastic about what I love to do, it might draw someone to do the same. And then when they come to doing this work, that they love it as much as I do. So,
very good.
If you are interested in getting started in Windows forensics, watch these videos here. If you are interested in getting started in learning about the Linux command line, watch these videos here. Thanks for your time and see you again.